This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you guys back to another episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Chris Blades, and before I get started today, I want to make sure I take the time out to remind you, as always, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure you're always on top when we drop our latest stuff. Also, if you could, please as well, give us a 5-star rating, write us a nice review. Be very appreciated, very helpful. Let us know what you guys like, what you guys dislike, the ways we can improve. All that fun stuff. And also, if you're on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can debate, we can discuss. And I feel like it's only right we start off our discussion today with the Thursday night, I almost said Sunday night, with the Thursday night football game. A nice little divisional matchup for the Thursday game. Colts, Titans, in what was... Well, A, dominant performance by the Colts, and B, also a very important game for the Colts, because they came in at 5-3, the Titans were 6-2, and now they have won, and they have catapulted themselves to first place in the division, at least according to ESPN. Both teams are 6-3, but they hold the tiebreaker. I guess they've only played each other once. Yeah, because technically the Titans have more wins in division. The Titans are 2-1. To the Colts 1-1, but I believe this is the first time they've played. Yes, it is. Yeah, they play in 2 weeks, which is, again, that's kind of interesting that they play, then they have not random, but like different opponents, and they play again. It's a very quick turnaround. But I guess the same thing kind of happened with the Steelers and Ravens. Like they play like twice in like a month or something around that time span. So that's interesting. But yeah, so this is a big game because had the Colts lost, now the Titans would be 7-2. Now you're 5-4. And you already lost one game, so the best you could hope to do is tie in the division. So like I said, it was a very big game, and they came out and played like it. Now, again, we'll talk about the Titans and their issues, because really the game swung on two very bad special teams plays, which again, they had a little bit of control, then like I said, the calamities happened, and then that was basically all she wrote. But the team started out, the Titans started out hot because they came down the field easy, first drive, touchdown. I was like, oh, okay, because obviously we came into the game, a lot of people were talking about that the Colts had a really good defense. Then you see that first drive, you're a little bit concerned. If you're a Colts fan or just a person that believes in the Colts, you're just like, oh, where did the defense go? And like I said, it shouldn't be that easy, but again, clearly their game script, whatever they decided they were going to draw up the Titans, was very good to start this game. The issue with them was that the rest of their script, or the rest of their play calling, throughout the majority of the game, was pretty bad. In terms of, again, generating yards and points and things like that, because they didn't score another touchdown. Well, they didn't score a touchdown the whole second half. They scored another one in the second quarter, but it was with like 3 minutes left. So like I said, you score on your first drive, then you end up kicking a field goal early in the second, then you score another touchdown, and then you're stuck on 17 the rest of the game. So, like I said, clearly things did not go as they would have liked from the offense standpoint. And I think one of the bigger plays that it didn't hit me at the time, because even though I have A.J. Brown on my fantasy team, I thought it was like, oh, okay, it's one play, it's not going to matter. But the deep pass to Ryan Tannehill threw on 3rd and 11, and in the first he caught, like, he looked like he was going to catch, but I think he tracked the ball, or he saw it too late, so it ended up bouncing off of him. And then it popped up, he tried to catch it, and then he dropped it. So that was their second drive. They had to punt. That was a 3rd and long. It could have easily went for a touchdown, let alone a big play, a first down, everything. And I think had they caught that, the entire momentum of the game has shifted. Because now, like I said, they're most likely driving for their second score in as many drives after holding the Colts to a turnover on downs, because the Titans were very aggressive. The Colts were very aggressive in this game, going for it on 4th down. But again, with Frank Reich, that's not necessarily surprising. But still, they were aggressive. They went for it on 4th down on their first drive at like the 29-yard line, the Tennessee 29. Did not get it. I think it was Evans. Yeah, no. Oh, it was Malcolm Butler. Oh, yeah, because Malcolm Butler and didn't make it. I think it was the Evans one I was thinking of was a different play. But yeah, so they come down, get the stop. So like I said, you do that, then you flip around and either, like I said, you flip the field in terms of getting a big play, or you potentially get a touchdown. Now the entire momentum, and you're at home, obviously, though with no fans, but you're at home. Like I said, the whole entire momentum of that game, or just the entire outlook on that game, may be completely different if that catch is made. So like I said, you can't play what ifs, because again, you could do that literally every game at this point. But like I said, if that was caught, the entire game maybe goes differently for the Titans. Unfortunately, it was not. And like I said, the Colts were able to drive down the next drive, get a field goal. The Titans were able to respond with their own field goal. Then Nyheim Hines started what would be a very good day for him. He caught a 13-yard touchdown pass on the subsequent drive to tie the game at 10. Then, like I said, the Titans did a good job. They responded, drove down the field, did a nice little end around to Jonnu Smith for an easy touchdown. So you got that, and then the Colts were able to get a field goal before the half. But all right, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. You're the Titans. You're up 17-13. It's at home. Everything's good. Then you come out the first drive of the second half. You force a stop on 4th down. This one, I think, was this the one near the goal? No, yeah, this is the one at the goal line. So they got 1st and goal at the 5, the Colts did. And went 4-yard pass where, what's his name? Rivers probably could have thrown it earlier, but didn't. And like I said, that led to Trey Burton getting tackled short. Then they come back the next play, a pass to Zach Pascal. He gets stopped at the 1. He was initially ruled in, but he was clearly down at the 1. So, all right, hit the ball 3rd and goal at the 1. Try to pump it up the middle with Jonathan Taylor. Did not work. And then 4th and 1, they try the same thing. The first one was left guard. This one's right guard, but still generally up the middle. With Jordan Wilkins, also didn't work. This was the Rashaan Evans play. So, boom, the Titans are feeling good. They come out. The Colts drive down the field, but you got to stop. And then this is when tragedy struck for the Titans. So they were forced to punt on the next drive because, again, their offense really couldn't do much of anything in the second half. So they forced to punt, and unfortunately, their punter, who they said this was their 3rd punter in 3 games or something like that, which is very wild, he shanked it terribly. 17-yard punt, went out of bounds at the Tennessee 27-yard line. So now the Colts come down, score an easy touchdown. Not easy touchdown, but scoring 4 plays. Nyheim Hines again, continuing on his good day. Then the next drive, the Titans come out. So now take that back. So the Colts are now up 20-17 after that touchdown. Just, again, to paint the picture. Then the Titans go 3 and out again on their subsequent drive. And then this time, the punt is blocked because they just didn't do a good job protecting. And now it's recovered for a touchdown. So you were up 17-13 with the time of the punt. It was 4:14 in the 3rd. And by 1:52 in the 3rd, you are now down 27-17. So like I said, it literally a 2-3 minute swing. Everything just changed. And like I said, with the way the offense was sputtering, at that point, there was a chance, obviously, but it went to the wayside when Steven Gostkowski missed, I believe, his 8th kick of the year, they said. So again, how he's still the kicker after missing 7 kicks is beyond me. But this one, I mean, it didn't end up mattering because the Colts ended up scoring on their next drive anyway. But at least, again, now you're within a 1-point game. Maybe the Colts get a little bit tighter. You never know. But yeah, like I said, the Colts and Nyheim Hines specifically did what he had to do. He had 70 yards on the ground and a touchdown. He had 5 catches for 45 yards and a touchdown. Michael Pittman had over 100. Phil Rivers threw for over 300 yards and 1 touchdown. Didn't throw any interceptions, which was obviously big for him because, Philip will give the ball up from time to time. And even though they did an all right job on Derrick Henry, 19 for 103. But again, so they were down most of the second half. They weren't really able to utilize them as much as they would have liked, which obviously hurts their offense. But like I said, I think this is from Mike Clay. He put out, not that he came up with these stats, but he was just like relaying the stats. He tweeted out after the game at Mike Clay NFL, the Colts' dominance of passing games continues. Only 147 yards allowed, 5 for 65 for Corey Davis, 1 for 21 for A.J. Brown, and 2 for 14 for Jonnu Smith. So yeah, the Colts' pass defense continues to be elite. I mean, I have to check the yardage specifically to see how many yards they give up through the air. So give me a second to check on that. But like I said, I think that was their big thing. Even like they were showing like they were tops in yardage, tops in like yards per game rushing and things like that. Like their defense has been very good this year, which I think is important for them moving forward potentially if they want to again compete and win this division and then maybe even compete for the playoffs. Because if they're gonna play defense this well, and Phillip Rivers can find a way not to turn the ball over, and plus they can figure out their running back situation. Because obviously, like they want it to be Jonathan Taylor. He started today, but he was kind of Nyheim Hines has had great games, but also had some mediocre games. Because again, that's just the kind of player he is. He's not necessarily a great running back at this point in time. But like I said, their pass defense has been pretty good. I think, yeah. I don't know if this is I'm on NFL.com. I don't know if this accounts for this game or not. But they're top 10 in terms of yards per game given up through the air and things like that. They're in terms of rushing yards. This is for their defense. Let me see. In terms of rush yards, they were, like I said, top 10 in that. So, like I said, and then they're also like getting some turnovers and things like that. So, if they can play this level of defense, and then like Phillip Rivers can control his impulses to turn the ball over, and they can like establish a good run game behind the good offensive line, like the Colts are like a sneaky team heading into the playoffs, or like heading down the stretch. Not even because obviously we're quite a ways away from the playoffs, but they're a sneaky team through the rest of the season because again, generally speaking, defense travels, and like I said, if they can figure out their three-headed running back situation, and like I said, they can get Phillip not to turn the ball over, then they can beat a lot of teams. Like we've seen that they are 6-3 for a reason. Now, in fairness, they did just lose to the Ravens last week but they bottled them up pretty well in the first half. I'm trying to look at who else they've beaten so far. Yeah, that's the only issue. Their wins aren't really that good outside the Titans, obviously, because people think the Titans are good. But like I said, they have some chances the next 2 weeks. They play the Packers and they play the Titans again over the next 2 weeks, plus also have games against the Raiders and the Steelers. So again, we'll see, because their wins so far this year have been, again, the Titans, the Lions, the Bengals, the Bears, the Jets, and the Vikings. And they lost to the Browns. So again, not exactly the greatest group in terms of teams, especially in terms of offenses, but if they can continue this against good passing teams and good offenses, then okay, then we can buy into it a little bit more. So again, that'll be an interesting thing to kind of see how that plays out the rest of the year, if their defense can continue to play at this level. And like I said, if that allows Phil Rivers to not have to take so many chances and try to do so many things and force some things, because I know obviously with the Chargers especially the last few years, but over the course of his career, like he's been in situations late in games or where he's been down and had to try to come back and things like that. So maybe you try to force things, or you do things you wouldn't normally do if you're winning, and the lead's a little bit more comfortable. So like I said, we'll see how that goes. And like I said, for the Titans, this is a tough one because the Andrews didn't play that well. And again, it shows the importance of having good play in all three phases. Like I said, 2 bad plays on special teams turned a 4-point lead into a 10-point deficit. Yeah, I just wanted to double check. I know I did the math right. Yeah, it was 4-point lead to a 10-point deficit. And like I said, in 2-3 minutes. Just they were leading, they were comfortable, and then boom, just like that, the whole game flipped. And then that doesn't even account for the fact that their kicker missed another field goal to potentially cut it to a single-digit deficit. So like I said, that shows the importance. And like I said, they're going to have to figure out the kicker situation because Gostkowski can't be trusted at this point. Got to figure out the punter situation because, again, they've had to cycle through different punters. But clearly this guy, I mean, granted, the block wasn't his fault, but the shank, and I mean, it happens to the best of them, but also that can't happen. Like 17 yards, that's not good. And like I said, this was going to be a tough little stretch for them because they beat the Bears last week. All right, that's cool. But then they play the Colts. They play the Ravens next week. They play the Colts again, obviously. Then they play the Browns. And then they still have a game later against the Packers. So these next 3 games are going to be very important to see kind of where they're at. Because obviously earlier in the season, they looked really good. They started off really well. But again, if they can't get their passing game going earlier and more efficiently throughout the game, granted you're not going to face a good pass defense like the Colts have been throughout this year every week. But the Ravens' defense isn't terrible. Like I said, then they play the Colts again. Then they play the Browns. The Browns' defense a little lackluster. So again, their defense that they play in the last 5 games aren't necessarily the defense they're going to play in these next 2. But still, you don't want to drop these 2 and now be 6-5, and basically have to win out to make sure you secure yourself a spot in the playoffs. And most importantly, win that Browns game, because that could be for playoff positioning. In terms of that 7th seed or potentially 8th seed if they need to use that. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Like I said, a good win for the Colts. Very convincing win for the Colts. Like I said, tough loss for the Titans. We see how they bounce back next week because it's not going to get that much easier against the Ravens. And like I said, then you got to go to Indianapolis. I mean, home field advantage isn't really what it used to be anymore. But then I'm saying you got to play the Colts again, a team that more or less dominated you. So again, they have to figure out a way to get the pass game going earlier. And like I said, shore up their special teams. Like I said, you're not going to win very many games going for 147 yards or whatever Tannehill threw for. 147, 15 to 27. Like, wasn't very efficient. Anything like that. Your best receiver only getting 1 catch all game is not really going to get it done. On only 4 targets, not they threw the ball a lot. I mean, they don't, but still, like I said, you're not going to be able to beat very many teams throwing the ball 150 yards. Unless Derrick Henry's going off for 150, 200, like a Dalvin Cook's been, where I think they said the Vikings, Kirk Cousins has thrown the ball like 24 times last 2 games or something like that. Like I said, not throwing the ball out, or like you saw with Jimmy G last year in the playoffs, where like our running game is so dominant that we can afford to not throw the ball so our quarterback doesn't screw it out. Like, their running game was like fine in this game, but again, once they had to try to pass, they weren't very efficient because they weren't really trying to pass much early in the game. Well, again, obviously, like I said, the A.J. Brown drop proved to be crucial. That's what I was trying to say. But yeah, like I said, a very, very good game, very competitive game, like I said, so that's always good for Thursday night. Well, competitive for most of the game. But yeah, it's always what you hope for on Thursday, just like a quality matchup. And like I said, that's what we got. So that was cool. So from talking about one team who struggled in the past game in this game to another team that's struggling in the past game, that's the Ravens. So I guess coming off of that game, especially where a lot of people talking about it from the Colts game on Sunday, which they did win, but they were talking about their lack of a passing game for most of the majority of the game, especially in the first half. Lamar Jackson had some interesting comments about the offense, and I know the Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, kind of pushed back on that a little bit. But I know there was one article that I read that I'll tell you guys about, and I would advise you to read as well if you're curious about the Ravens offense. Like, if you're not, then whatever. But if you are, or you're just a general football fan, then I would advise you to read it. So we would talk about that article and like the Ravens passing offense, or lack thereof, or after the break. So stay right there.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we're back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So Lamar Jackson, like we said before the break, had some interesting comments about the Ravens offense. I guess it was earlier this week. I believe it was on Wednesday. Obviously, if you've been paying attention to the Ravens and their offense, you notice that they've had a significant drop-off in terms of their efficiency and effectiveness and their overall like play so far this season compared to last season. They went from number 2 in yards per game in 2019 to number 23 in 2020 at the midway point. On Wednesday, Lamar said it was the Rich Eisen show that Baltimore is too predictable on offense, saying they're calling out our plays, stuff like that. They know what we're doing. Now, obviously, his coach pushed back on that. The offensive coordinator, that is Greg Roman, pushed back on that. He says that calling out plays on defense is nothing new. They're going to be right sometimes. They're going to be wrong sometimes. I think we know that, but that's definitely an element of the game. It always has been and probably always will be. So before I get into Lamar's part, that part I will say is true. This isn't something that is new or anything that people didn't already know. It was a possibility. Again, not every time when you go out there do those other teams know your plays. But again, they watch film too. They study film. They study tendencies. They study like what formations you like to run, when you like to run them. Like again, down and distances, what do you like to do? So again, these guys get paid, so them knowing what could come potentially isn't always a new concept. Like I said, sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. The issue is that they're also not that good at what they're doing, and I think the issue is that they're too predictable. Like I said, knowing when the play is one thing, but knowing when the play is going to happen and where it's going to go. Especially when you're running something like a read option where the entire offense is predicated on what the defense does. So if the defense knows, all right, this is what they're going to run, this scenario, then they can defend it a little bit better than if they don't know what it is and you're kind of just playing off your instincts. And so like I said, that's been a part of the issue as well. So like I said, the Lamar Jackson's comments, they make some sense, and I do understand his point, and they definitely need to work on some things. And again, this isn't, like I said, this isn't a new concept. I know in Philly, if you're an Eagles fan, you know this has happened. I believe it was the Seahawks game. I forget if it was this year or not this year, because they played them this year, but I forget if it was last year or 2 years ago. Somebody said that their screen passes were very predictable. I think it was KJ Wright, said that they knew when the screens were coming. And again, they were running a lot of screens towards the middle/end of the season because their receivers were all hurt, and they were trying to manufacture yards that way. But again, their screen game is very predictable. That's why I think they have I thought I saw a stat on Twitter, which again, take that what you will. But I think I saw something like they have 35 yards on screen pass or something like that. Again, I don't know the exact official numbers, but regardless, their screen game has been terrible. And I know it was also, obviously, if you've been a fan for a while, then you know about the Chip Kelly era, and that's kind of how that ended the way that it did, was due to the fact that a lot of people were starting to understand the Chip Kelly offense, and like I said, it was becoming predictable. Like the plays weren't that complex, the formation, different things. Teams could just figure it out or know what they were doing based on the play, the formation and things like that. It's similar to the Ravens offense, and obviously not nearly as good, but still, like I said, if people know what's coming, it makes it a lot easier to defend, and thus makes your offense worse. Now, what I thought was interesting was, as I talked about, or as I hinted to earlier, Benjamin Solak. He's a guy that writes about the Eagles and stuff. But he also works for the Draft Network, so he does a lot of draft stuff and then just does regular football stuff. And he had a very lengthy, very informative article about the Ravens' passing offense and what's wrong with it and different things. And he pointed out how, well, again, we'll talk about, because like I said, you can read the whole article because there's a lot of stats, a lot of numbers, different things. But I wanted to highlight a couple of things. So first, he started out that the run game isn't that bad, compared to last year's. Again, last year, he said that they led the league in both passing and rushing DVOA, which is an advanced metric. I think it's by Football Outsiders, and generated positive EPA, which I think is estimated points added per play on design runs over a full season, something most offenses never accomplish. This year, the Ravens remain a top 5 rushing offense by DVOA, which is still quite good, but obviously not significantly better than everyone else in the league. So then, obviously, the offense takes a step back in that regard, and then obviously the passing game is much worse. So as he said, in terms of efficiency, different things, the Ravens' EPA in the passing game has gone from 2nd to 19th. The DVOA has gone from 1st to 23rd. And Lamar Jackson's ANY /A, I forget exactly what that stands for, but I know it's a advanced metric that people like to use, has fallen all the way from 8.9 to 6.2. These drop-offs, of course, cannot completely contributed to the fact that offenses or defenses know what's happening, especially, like I said, Lamar Jackson is still very good, and the Ravens offense is still very good in play action. It's a little bit worse, but it's still, like, relatively good. So like I said, like, if the teams knew what was coming, they wouldn't fall for the play action that much, obviously. But again, they still are, because they have to respect their run game. But it's just like when they drop back to pass, like I said, their offense is much worse. Like I said, this is where obviously you talk about Lamar a little bit and how he's playing a little bit worse, but also this is where Greg Roman could come in, because again, he was a guy that was in San Francisco for the Kaepernick years. And while they started off good, they obviously hit a bit of a wall there, and obviously led to people losing their jobs and things like that. So he pointed out in this article, like I said, he pointed out a lot of things, but a couple of things I wanted to highlight were that he talked about that the Ravens in 2019 are much like the Niners in 2012, in that like both teams finished top 5 in rushing and passing DVOA. Roman called the plays, and obviously Alex Spencer was replaced by Cap, and they went to a very play-action heavy passing attack that utilized pistol formations with heavy personnel to operate the quarterback run game. And that's basically what they did last year, or basically how they remade the offense around Lamar Jackson. So, like I said, it's not surprising that it worked to such a degree, because again, you saw it work before, and Lamar Jackson's a better runner than Kaepernick, because no offense to him, because he was a great runner, but again, Lamar Jackson's a little bit different, so it's not a surprise that it worked. But also, from 2012 to 2013, so I'd be from like 2019 to 2020, Kaepernick experienced a similar significant drop-off in his drop-back efficiency, going from 64% and 8.5 yards per attempt to about 57% completion percentage and 7.3 yards per attempt. It's almost precisely the hit that Jackson took from 2019 to 2020, and it's accompanied by a similarly buoyant effect of the play-action game, I guess, trying to pop up the numbers and everything like that. And so, like I said, what the true concern will be is what happened next year, because in 2014, they kind of just tried, then the Niners stripped everything down and tried to like go clean, and that they brought in some receivers. They tried to go a little bit more 11 personnel, didn't go as heavy, didn't go as play-action heavy, and thus the offense fell off even more. And like I said, that's what he talked about. The Ravens have tried to do. Obviously, they drafted Marquise Brown, they drafted Miles Boykin, they drafted Devin Duvernay in the offseason. So they're clearly making an investment on getting their receiver position better. And obviously they traded away Hayden Hurst, so they've run a lot less. Heavy personnel, like 13 personnel. He talked about in the article how Baltimore last year led the league in 22 personnel, which is 2 tight ends, 2 running backs, which again is something that the Niners used a lot in 2012 and 2013. But then in 2014 they didn't, and so like I said, it's not a shock that they went a little bit downhill. And then, so like I said, Baltimore led the league in 22 personnel and snaps in 2019 at 15%, and was 5th in 13 personnel, which is 1 back, 3 tight ends, and with 6%. This year, they still have the lead in 22 personnel, but they basically eliminated the 13 personnel. So now they're because they're just Mark Andrews and Nick Boyle, basically. And also that they've been in 11 personnel more. So last year it was 46%. This year it's 51%. And that also comes with only a 41% success rate on passing downs, I guess, from 11 personnel. And also this happens to be their least effective passing grouping or passing personnel. So like I said, they're using it more and they're also throwing more out of it, but because their receivers aren't that good, it's not really working out that well. So like I said, and again, there's a lot of other things that could be accompanied with it. Obviously, Marshall Yanda retired, they've had some injuries on the offensive line. Like I said, the receivers aren't really that good. So again, them being bad on offense isn't a crazy thing, but I do think this is an interesting thing to monitor. And again, we'll see if it continues through the second half of the year and into next year, assuming Greg Roman is still there. But the fact that they deployed a specific offense, it worked the first year, then the second year got a little bit worse, then the third year it got even more worse, and they did it with a similar type of quarterback, similar type of success rate. In the first year, things like that, obviously, the Niners didn't win the Super Bowl, but you get the point. Is interesting to me. And again, that I think that is a bigger story here than obviously Lamar playing badly and him saying that the offense is too predictable and things like that. Just because we've seen this happen with Greg Roman before. If you want to dig a little bit deeper than just the the play of just Lamar, which again is obviously going backwards. Like I said, Benjamin Solak, he did a good job. I think it's at Benjamin Solak on Twitter. He did a very good job of explaining all this. So like I said, it's very analytical, and there's also some film in there as well. If you want to go into it and read the whole thing, I would recommend it. If you, like I said, if you're a Baltimore fan trying to figure out what's wrong with your offense or why it's gone so badly, or again, if you're just a general football fan and kind of just curious why, so at Benjamin Solak, and you're wondering why the Ravens passing game, obviously that wasn't great last year, but was better, is now worse. And like I said, you don't want to just do the normal, like, oh, Lamar like isn't playing well, which he isn't. But again, there's a lot of other mitigating factors there. So, and also another thing he talked about was like the lack of play, like the play design is lacking from the passing game. So that's another that's an offensive coordinator issue. That's not a quarterback issue. If the quarterback is he can only, like I said, he calls the plays and they run the routes, and if the routes don't get people open, then you don't have anything to do. Also, again, he did point that Lamar's a little quick to run sometimes when the first read isn't there. So there is that. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of interesting to look into what is going on in Baltimore on that offense, because, like I said, when you're not playing well, even though they're still, I think, 6-2 right now. So again, they're not playing poorly. That's not the issue. It's just that they're not as good as they were last year offensively. And like I said, that's going to be an issue going forward because like I said, they're 2 games behind the Steelers in their own division. So now we're talking about going from the first place team and having a bye to now being a wild card team. They've lost to arguably the 2 best teams on their schedule so far this year, in the Chiefs and the Steelers. Obviously, they did beat the Colts, so that's not a bad win. They also play the Titans coming up. Like I said, they play the Steelers again. They play the Browns again, who maybe they're better by then, maybe they're not. I don't know. We'll find out. So again, they have a couple good teams coming up throughout the rest of the season. But yeah, it's just like you want to see that offense pick up heading into the playoffs. Because again, you have to beat teams like the Steelers. You have to beat teams like the Chiefs. You have to beat teams like the Colts, again, or the Titans. Or I guess even the Bills. But again, I don't know if you're as afraid of the Bills. Though if you got a good Josh Allen game, then I would be afraid of the Bills. And there's been a lot more good Josh Allen games than bad Josh Allen games this year. So I would be a little bit afraid of the Bills, especially if their defense kind of turns it around, because their defense has been a little lackluster. But they started to pick that up. Now we're talking about a different Bills team. So yeah, I just thought that was kind of interesting just to kind of, like I said, the article it was on, he posted it on Twitter, and I follow him because he does evil stuff. So I thought that was pretty cool. And just to read into that is exactly what may be going wrong. Again, he doesn't know 100%. He just like watches film and does some research and says things. So again, that was what his issues were, the things he noticed and things like that. So again, a lot of people may have different opinions about it. But I thought the Greg Roman connection, and like the figuring out of the Greg Roman offense is interesting. Because again, that's what you always say is like, oh, wait till you get film on a guy, wait till you get film on a guy. And that is true. But also if you get film on an offense and the offense doesn't change, it becomes easier to defend. Like I said, people have years of film on Tom Brady, on Peyton Manning, on Drew Brees, on Aaron Rodgers, on Patrick Mahomes. But one, they were great. And 2, their offenses didn't stay stale. Like I said, when the Packers offense got stale, they got a new coach. I mean, they let go of Matt McCarthy. Like I said, you see the Chiefs, they just had Mahomes going motion this past weekend. So again, they're always trying new things and adding new things. So even though you have an idea of what they run and what they do and what Mahomes is good and what he's bad at, again, if the offense is consistently updating and advancing, it's going to be hard to keep up. Because even when you think you know what they're going to do, they do something different because now they added a new play in here for this week or something like that. Then it always keeps you on your toes. And like I said, that's what the Chiefs do. That's what good offenses do. That's what good offensive minds do. So like I said, as much as you want to talk about figuring out a player, sometimes you can figure out an offense. And like I said, those kind of go hand in hand. Because again, if the offense is figured out, then makes the offense easier to defend, which then in turn makes the quarterback easier to defend, which makes the quarterback play worse, and so on and so forth. So, like I said, Lamar's not playing well. The Ravens' offense isn't playing well, but like I said, a guy who was definitely talked about as potentially being a head coaching hire in Greg Roman. That is an interesting wrinkle into the story. If, like, again, it's just as much as Lamar as it is the offense remaining stale and not being that creative, and like I said, going away from what they did best, which is go heavy personnel last year, and like I said, now trying to be a little bit more pass happy, a little bit more spread offense. And that's not what they were. That's not what made them successful. Like I said, now they're trying to do that, and like I said, Nick Boyle isn't he's a good tight end 3. He's like an alright tight end 2. And like I said, now they don't have a tight end 3 basically. So a big staple of their offense is basically out of the playbook, a part of what made them so successful. So like I said, we'll see what happens with the Ravens, but I thought that was interesting. So like I said, if you're a fan, like I said, you can go to his Twitter. It'll be on there, but I think it's also, I guess if you just Google it, the article is called, I think I mentioned it before, but it's What's Wrong with the Ravens Passing Offense? Like I said, by Benjamin Solak on Draft Network. If you want to read through it, I would recommend it. If you're a football fan or if you're a Ravens fan, trying to figure out what is wrong with the Ravens. So speaking of what is wrong, with the Ravens, there's another team in the NBA a little bit further south, down there in Houston, that's going through its own problems. And now, potentially, the team is going to get blown up. Because then all sorts of rumors coming out about Russ and different things. So that was a nice, lengthy athletic article about like everything that's going on with the team and how like the certain stars may or may not want out. So we'll kind of talk about all the drama going down in Houston right after the break. So stay right there.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we're back. Again, the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by GSMC Podcast Network. So, there's quite a bit of drama going on in Houston. I mean, you could say that there's a problem down there. But, yeah. Obviously, they were going through some, I don't say some turmoil, but just some changes this offseason. Obviously, you let go of the GM, or he decided to step away to say he was going to retire. Everything, takes a job in Philly. So, there's that. Then you let go of the head coach, and now he's on to Brooklyn. And then you hire a new head coach from Dallas and Steven Silas, and you bring in a new GM and Raphael Stone. So, again, a little bit of an overhaul going on within the Rockets organization. And apparently that might not just be limited to the coaches and the front office. It might also come in the form of players. So, there was a lengthy article from Kelly Iko, I believe is how you pronounce it. Sam Amick and Shams in The Athletic. So again, if you don't have The Athletic, you will not be able to read it. I imagine there's similar articles on ESPN and things like that. This is from The Athletic specifically, talking about how Russell Westbrook wants out, and that's just the start of the problems that are currently going on in Houston. So apparently Westbrook has made it known for quite a time. Again, this is all in the article. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's rather lengthy. But again, you read through the whole thing if you have The Athletic. I believe you can get I'm not going to say you get a free trial for the article. It's not that serious. But if you have The Athletic, it's a nice article to read. So he said, or it was said in the article that, according to sources, Westbrook has made it known for quite some time now that he would like to see significant changes within the Rockets culture, specifically his desire for more team-wide accountability, discipline, and structure had been the focus of talks with team officials. Throughout the season, Westbrook was the consistent presence who kept Harden accountable, and the two close friends had several verbal exchanges, that sources described as tense but needed. And again, you kind of saw that on the court. Not a lot, not like the same level of like him and Chris Paul. Their arguments are back and forth, seemed a little bit more, not hostile, but like less friendly. Again, because if you're my boy, or I'm your boy, or whatever, like we can confront each other. We can talk about things in a different way than I could with like a stranger or like a friend that I'm not as close with. So yeah, and I can hold you accountable in a way that maybe other people can't. So there is that. So again, not shocking that Westbrook was that force during the season. But still, like I said, just an interesting note. In this article, they also mentioned, in essence, a source said that Westbrook would like to see something closer to the Thunder culture that he helped create from 2008 to 2019 while he was there, as a way of making him more comfortable within the organization. The organization, in turn, has been receptive to these requests and is focused on building the sort of environment that functions better for everyone, Westbrook included. Again, they're not just going to cater solely to his needs because, again, he's only been here for a short period of time. There's no reason to... I mean, they already changed the whole team around for him, basically, because you trade away Capella, who worked fine with Harden because he didn't fit with Russ. So, again, it's not like they haven't already made some changes for him, but that was just on the court. Now this would be more off the court. So, like I said, so that was just one aspect of it. Also, just looking back on the Harden and Russ were a little bit concerned. Obviously, like they said, there's overwhelming support for Stephen Silas as he prepares to coach for a team for the first time, and after 20 years of being like an assistant or doing different things within basketball. However, with Harden and Westbrook, apparently there is some concern about the direction of the team, the direction that the team is heading in. Specifically worried about the team may prefer a rebuild sooner rather than later, with both stars still in their prime of their careers, and the championship window that was once wide open, now shut considerably. Both have zero interest in a rebuild. Obviously, that makes total sense. Also, they kept on John Lucas to be a part of the coaching staff. I believe. Also, he was a guy that helped that they could communicate. Russ and Harden could communicate with. He tried to tell them that there's still a commitment to winning at the highest level, but again, maybe they don't feel that same way. And again, also, I think some of this comes with like the pressure. The players on the team knowing that like, hey, this is supposed to be a championship caliber team, and we're clearly not that because we haven't even reached the finals. And like some of that pressure starting to mount. And like, again, when you don't win, people had maybe taken sacrifices or done things that they thought compromised them and what they think they're capable of on the basketball court in order to try to win games. They're a little bit more angry. So you see that in the article. They mentioned PJ Tucker, who's definitely one of, if not the glue guy on that team. He's a guy that signed for around $8 million back in 2017 and has seen other quote-unquote 3-and-D wings get a lot bigger paydays in less than point situations than obviously a key starter on a contender would be or believes that he's worthy of getting. So Tucker has stated his intent that he wants to finish his career as a Rocket, but apparently he was insulted by Houston's decision to delay extension discussions and wait until after the February 6th trade deadline to guarantee his 2020-2021 salary, 2020-2021 salary. So again, he's a little on the first step. Plus he's a little bit older, so again, you take less money to win. But now you can either continue to do that, or if I'm going to be here, like, hey, you can compensate me for what I've done and what I've meant to this team. Because again, a lot of that small ball stuff doesn't work without PJ Tucker doing the jobs that he does that are kind of thankless and very, like very gritty, very like, again, got to do the dirty work. Got to bang down there with centers at like 6'5", 6'6", 6'6", 6'7", something like that. Completely out of position. Things of that nature. But he's willing to do the job because he was doing it in hopes that he was doing it for a team that could be competing for a championship. And obviously they haven't got that there yet. Also, another person that's apparently a little dismayed with their role is Eric Gordon, who was the 6th man of the year in 2017. And obviously he was banged up a lot of this year and was been banged up over the course of his career. He expressed displeasure on a number of occasions in terms of, I guess, his role, because he thinks he can be like a very good scoring option, and a lot of times he's restricted to a more catch and shoot, like spot up kind of role. Other than obviously when Harden or Russ are on the bench, then like, hey, okay, it could work. But again, he thinks he could be a legitimate scorer on the team, and he's not that. So then there's that. Him having issues there with that. I think Daniel House is another guy that claimed to have issues with his role as well. There, especially with under D'Antoni, which again is interesting that a lot of this is coming out. Austin Rose, another guy that he was very unhappy with his utilization. Apparently, just a quick anecdote before I get back to the other stuff. In one instance, Rivers went on an expletive-laden tirade following a game where D'Antoni called for him to be substituted only to change his mind and insert new signing Damari Carroll. In another instance, Rivers was barked at by Harden after the former MVP missed a free throw and blamed Rivers, who was standing up by the bench, for distracting him. So, like I said, again, this team is clearly dealing with issues. We've got a lot of guys who, again, when you're on a team that's winning, competing for a championship, you're like, all right, I'm willing to take a lesser role or take less money, different things like that. Won't you see that maybe isn't going to be the case? Like, I want to get the ball. I want to play well. I want to put out my numbers and things like that, but I also like want to get compensated. Again, if you win a championship, that's nice. But this team probably isn't going to do that. So if the players realize that, they're like, hey, at least I could do is get some money or get like a real legitimate role, like some real playing time out of this. And like I said, those aren't happening. So that was kind of intriguing to see kind of where they go from here. Because again, a lot of these issues were with the last regime, like with D'Antoni and with and like the way he utilized guys. So you don't really know how Steven Silas is going to do that. So I did find the timing of this article very interesting due to the fact that, again, you got a new coach in there. You don't really know exactly what's going to happen, how he's going to utilize guys, what their roles will be, things like that. So that did kind of intrigue me, the fact that this article came out and all those guys, especially expressing their displeasure with their roles before they really even knew what their roles were. Like I said, if it sounds like not Harden, because Harden, it said in the article that he's locked in on being like focusing on the Rockets and their season and stuff like that. So that's good. If they had a complete rebuild, they would be screwed due to the fact that they don't have their picks. Oklahoma City does, especially like if they have some pick swaps and like some outright picks from first round picks down the line. So again, if they're not good in the very near future, that could definitely hurt their chances of again rebuilding. Because as you saw with teams like the Nets, and not to say they didn't do a like Billy King like trade for Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. That'd be more Clippers. If they flame out again this year, yikes. But when you're a bad team and you trade away your draft picks, you kind of continue to stay bad because it's hard to get good. When you have top picks and then you don't get to utilize those top picks, you then traded them away in like pick swaps and things, and that's kind of why it took the Nets a little bit of a while after Paul Pierce and Garnett left to get back good again, because they were giving their picks or swapping their picks with the Celtics. So then, all right, the Celtics, they could draft Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum or like I said, trade the number one overall pick for that turned out to be Markelle Fultz and end up drafting Tatum and getting picks back from that. Like, those are things that the Nets could have done and players the Nets could have had. I think also they had the pick that ended up being Draymond Green. Like they've had some picks that could have been Nets players that would have helped them get better quicker. Obviously, they have KD and Kyrie now, so it doesn't really matter. But still, that's an issue. So, yeah, I am kind of intrigued what happens next with the Rockets, only because, like I said, it does sound like Russ wants out. And if that is true and he is officially going to be gone, then, like I said, now you're wondering where is he going to go. And like I said, you've heard there were a couple rumors out there. And, again, we'll see kind of how they're going to work because, again, he's making a lot of money. Like I say, he's on a Chris Paul deal with another year on top of it. So, like, that's kind of an issue. But so far, the teams that have been reported are like the Clippers, which is an interesting one to me. Obviously, him and Paul George are probably cool, and he's from LA, so that like makes sense. But I don't know, like, what would you take back, like Lou Will and like Pat Bev and like Zubac and like some other guys, and also like why would Kawhi want Russell Westbrook on the team? I don't really know how that makes a lot of sense. But again, that's just me. There's that, and also again, I don't know if that's what Tyler wants to deal with his first year is having to throw Russ into whatever the Clippers are going to be. Not to say he's a hard guy to coach or things like that, but again, it's just a new piece to add in and try to figure out. And again, you also got to deal with the whole load management thing. And like, again, it seemed like the personalities kind of hurt them last year. And obviously Russ is a strong personality, not to say he's a bad teammate or anything, but he's a strong personality. So I'm kind of curious how that would go. The Knicks were floated out there as well, which is an interesting one. Only because, again, I could see him being in New York because of obviously the fashion and different things that he could do off the court. But in terms of on the court, like, all right, the Knicks could offer up some pieces, like if you like Frank Ntilikina or you like Kevin Knox, or like if they want to trade up Mitchell Robinson or something. But like him and RJ Barrett don't really seem to fit that well together. So don't really would understand that for the Knicks, other than they want to get like a star player. But then also, like, again, not that he's really up to him. I don't know exactly how much say he'll have in the decision. But like, also, I don't think Russ would want to go to the Knicks because like they're kind of sorry. So, like, why would you want to be on a sorry team? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But again, that is just me. I don't know what Russ wants to do. Another team I thought that was floated out there was the Hornets, which was like a weird one. Just because, it makes sense only because the Jordan thing, obviously he's a Jordan brand guy. Jordan knows the team, so like, all right, cool, we could help him out there. But like, again, the team, not good. And I don't really know if it has the organization structure that he's been looking for, that he would hope for. Obviously, when he's saying, according to the Athletic article, he wants a more Oklahoma City-like franchise, like organization and like front office style or like accountability style or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know if he'll get that in Charlotte. I don't know if he'll get that in New York. I'm not even sure. I mean, you would think he's going to get it in LA if they traded him to the Clippers. So again, Ty Lue had to deal with Kyrie and LeBron and guys like that. So he's used to how to deal with big personalities, things like that. But like I said, some of those destinations were kind of odd to your boy. Not gonna lie. Not gonna lie to you. Very, very strange to say the least. And yeah, I guess like now just like a waiting game. Obviously, I don't think the moratorium isn't officially up or anything like that, so you can't make trades or sign guys or do anything like that. So again, we won't really know until that window opens to where trades can be made to see if any trades are actually made. Because obviously we heard of rumors about Chris Paul as well. But yeah, just be curious to see. Obviously, if Russell Westbrook wants out, that's cool. But it also that means you have to have somebody that wants in, which I think the Ringer had an article basically where it's saying that same thing. Like, all right, cool, Russ could want to trade, like that's great, but like who's going to take him? Like I said, he wanted to trade last year, and it worked out that there was that his best friend or one of his best friends, I don't know if 100% that's his best friend, but one of his good friends was on a team that happened to have a point guard with a bad contract that you could that you could swap. And I said, I don't really know who has a contract worth trading other than like Blake Griffin. But then again, send him to Detroit. Like, I said, I guess Blake and Harden could work in theory, but like Blake has been hurt a lot, so there is that. Like I said, where are you trading that contract to? Again, if you trade him to the Knicks or the Hornets, all right, they got a lot of cap space, they can make it work, but it also stink. So not that Detroit's a whole lot better, but at least they're not the Knicks or the Hornets. So is that also, I thought somebody was saying like Atlanta. Was that him? Like, because again, I've seen a lot of different rumors and stuff on Twitter. I thought that was him that said that his list of teams include like the Hawks or something like that, which is again kind of wild. Again, Atlanta, fun city, that makes sense. But in terms of play, why in the world would he want to go to Atlanta? That makes no sense. And again, if that is true, I forget if that was true. And also another team people are floating out there if they want to do as the Orlando Magic, because then they could trade. Potentially, they could get back like Fultz or like Aaron Gordon or like Vucevic or somebody like that if you wanted to. Again, they have some decent pieces, but I imagine the package would probably center around Aaron Gordon, because I think he's on like a bigger deal, and plus he may fit well with Harden. I really don't know. But yeah, so that was interesting because clearly Houston's going through some issues, and I don't know how you fix them. Like I said, if a bunch of guys are unhappy with their roles and one out, potentially, at least one of the star players wants out, like that's not a good omen to start the season. Especially when you're a new head coach, you're coming in fresh, and that's not how you want to start off your tenure. It's having to trade away one of your two best players on the team. That's not how you want to start. But it seemed like it might be a possibility. So again, we'll see what kind of happens in Houston. But yeah, definitely a tad bit of a mess down there at the moment. So on a much more happier note, the MLB awards were this week, so they gave out we talked about the finals and how they gave out the awards. So talk about that, just run through those, and like I said, talk about my opinions. Like again, I feel like I picked most of the people. I could be wrong, but like we'll run through that. I think I only got like the one Coach of the Year wrong. I think if you want to play back the episode, like I said, I don't remember exactly what I picked for the Manager of the Year, but everyone else I remember who I picked, or who I thought was not picked, because again, I don't have a vote, who I thought was going to win, and I feel like most of them did, so there is that. But again, we'll talk about that right after the break, so stay right there.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
we're back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, like I said, MLB award winners were officially picked this week. One award each day in each league, obviously, not just like one award per day. It won't take too long. But I just thought I would go through them real quick, and like I said, talk about the winners, how I thought about them, all that stuff. So we will start. I guess we'll go in order of the days. So we'll start with Rookie of the Year. AL Rookie of the Year was Kyle Lewis, a unanimous selection for the honor. Became his second rookie, and in this year he became the second rookie to lead his team in average, home runs, runs, and walks, and was a mainstay on highlight reels with multiple home run robberies. Again, he was a very good fielder. So, and this is one that I was not shocked by. I believe he's I think he's the first Mariner to win it since Ichiro won it in 2001. I want to say somewhere around there. So again, this is not that surprising to me. Again, he was unanimous due to the fact that I believe. The reason why I believe he was unanimous was because Luis Robert had a very rough end of the season. He started off very hot and was basically almost a lock about halfway, 2/3 of the way through the season. And then, like I said, he kind of fell off a bit towards the end. And because the fact that Kyle Lewis was more consistent, that allowed him to stay in the race and then eventually win it at the end, just because, like I said, he was much more consistent throughout the entirety of the season. So again, that one did not shock me. Was shocked a little bit as it was unanimous. I thought, maybe somebody would pick Robert, but apparently not. So now moving on to the NL side of things, that one went to Devin Williams. Again, not that shocking after, like I said, I didn't have him originally. I had Cronenworth. I forgot to add him in there. But again, once the finals were named, I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be him 100%. I mean, he won the Reliever of the Year award as well, which again makes sense. He fanned a record 53% of his 100 batters faced, posting a microscopic .33 ERA and a .090 batting average against, and becoming the first reliever to win Rookie of the Year since 2011. And that was, who was that in 2011? That was Jeremy Hellickson. Interesting. I was just going through, because I was kind of curious. You're always kind of curious, at least I am personally, just if the Rookie of the Years continue on in their careers in all respective sports. Again, especially in basketball, you've seen some guys win Rookie of the Year and kind of just be or not even be that good at all, potentially be out the league in years. No, but it doesn't happen all the time like that. But again, RG3, I believe he won Rookie of the Year that year over Andrew Luck. And again, you saw kind of what happened to his career. So again, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But looking at baseball, I feel like a lot of these guys end up being if not great players, these fairly solid. If you look through the last 10 years, Natalie Feliz, I believe he was a reliever as well. I think he was kind of decent. He was pretty solid. Hellickson, I know he had a decent career. Also got Mike Trout on there. First ballot Hall of Famer. Will Myers with Tampa, who again isn't maybe Rookie of the Year caliber anymore or an all-star caliber, but again had a very solid year in San Diego. So a good contributor. Jose Abreu, who we'll talk about the award he won later in the season. Later in the segment. So again, he's been good. Carlos Correa, obviously, has had a good career. Again, maybe not an all-star every year, but was a key part of a World Series team. Is a good performer in the postseason. Still pretty young. again, he's got a good career ahead of him. Michael Fulmer in Detroit. Again, it's interesting with the pitchers only because I don't think he's kind of lived up to it as much since then. But also, Detroit kind of stinks. So, there's that. Aaron Judge in 2017. He was great. Well, this is just the American League, obviously. If you wanted to go to the National League, then we'll do that with Devin Williams. But also, yes, actually, that's what we were talking about. Because I said Hellickson, but he was in the American League. So I'll have to go check that on the Devin Williams situation. But yeah, Aaron Judge again when he's healthy, he's great. He's just not always healthy. Shohei Ohtani, a better hitter than a pitcher. If he just sticks to hitting, I think he'll be all right, and not try to do the two-way thing because his pitching not really that good at this moment. Maybe it'll get better, but at this moment, it is not good. So, like I said, just stick to the hitting, my guy. No reason to do that personally, but again, not him. So see about that. Yordan Alvarez again was hurt most this year. We really don't know, but he was great last year. And then we'll see what happens with Kyle Lewis. Like I said, if you go to the NL, I'm trying to see. Okay, here it is. So 2011 was Craig Kimbrell. Excuse me. So again, he's been a very solid player for years. Buster Posey was in 2010. He's been very good. Part of 3 World Series teams. Bryce Harper won a MVP. These are all Rookie of the Years. Jose Fernandez in Miami, RIP, was a great pitcher. Jacob deGrom, back-to-back Cy Young Award winner. Chris Bryant, good, a key part of a World Series team, and been a solid player since then. Corey Seager, again, key part of a World Series team, very solid player when he's been healthy. Cody Bellinger, copy-paste what I've said for the last 2 guys. Ron Acuna, not a World Series team, but a great piece to a very good team over the last 3 years. Pete Alonso is the only one that he hasn't had the success that some of these other guys have had. But again, he's still early in his career. He got a down year this year. We'll kind of see what happens there. So again, when you look at the MLB, a lot of these guys that end up winning Rookie of the Year also continue on and have good careers. So I think that's kind of interesting as well. So like I said, you got that in the Rookie of the Year. Then if you go to Manager of the Year, Kevin Cash won in the AL. Makes sense. They were the best team. They won their first AL East title since 2010. Even though they had 13 players on IL on September 1st. He had to use 59 different batting orders over the 60-game season and tied an MLB record by using 12 different pitchers to record a save. Like I said, that was not a surprise. They were the best team in the AL. It made sense going to him. Now, the NL one was a little bit more interesting to me, only because it went to Don Mattingly. Not to say he didn't deserve it. I thought they were going to go to the Tingler from, I think it was him and David Ross. I think those were the 3. So those were going to go to Tingler because, again, the Padres were very good. But, again, give credit to Don Mattingly. He's just the 5th Manager of the Year, the person to win Manager of the Year and MVP. He got to the Marlins to their first postseason appearance in 17 years, even with all the roster overhaul during the pandemic. So, again, he gets a lot of credit for that, and I'm not mad about that. I just thought they would go Padres, but again, a lot of people who probably vote on these things like Don Mattingly, so that doesn't hurt at all. But yeah, shout out to him. Like I said, the Marlins, what they accomplished this year, even though it wasn't a whole lot of success, is still very impressive. Like I said, what they had to deal with the pandemic and how much it hurt that team early on, just the different players that they had to use and different guys that they add to the team or call up or whatever, and still be able to compete throughout most of the year and then obviously eventually make the playoffs. It was very impressive. So shout out to him. Because like I said, didn't expect him to win it, but he did. And like I said, I'm not saying he's not deserving of it. I just thought it was going to go to somebody else. But again, Don Mattingly deserved to be in the top 3. So again, not mad at that at all. When you go to Cy Young, I think this was fairly simple. In AL, it went to Shane Bieber. First unanimous choice in the AL since 2011. And in that year, 2011, that was Justin Verlander. His first Cy Young. And again, not surprising. And this list, again, is a bunch of very good pitchers. And then Rick Porcello, if you look through the last 10 years. So that's kind of... I did not know he won a Cy Young award. That's intriguing. But all right. But yeah, it was first unanimous choice, like I said, since 2011. Dominated 2020, set an MLB record with a 41.1 strikeout rate, recorded the lowest qualified ERA in 1.63 since 1969, and tied for the lowest batting average, 0.167 since 69 as well. Though again, shortened season. Didn't have as many starts, didn't get to hit that little rough patch, and maybe some, or have that rough start that you would probably have in a normal season where you start, 20, 25 plus games, something like that. Like I said, didn't have that happen, so that helped him out with these numbers. But again, you can only play as many games as you're allowed, and he was dominant in those games, so can't be mad about that. And then in the National League, it went to Trevor Bauer. Became the first Red to ever win the award. Led the NL, like we talked about, in ERA, 1.73, ERA plus with 276, WHIP in 0.79, opponent's batting average in 0.159, and shutouts with 2. He ranked second in strikeouts with 100, and strikeouts per 9 innings in 12.3. So again, both of these I think were pretty cut and dry. Like again, if DeGrom didn't have that big blow-up start there towards the end, he might have been able to at least make it more competitive. And again, it wasn't unanimous, so at least shows it was somewhat competitive between those two and Darvish. But again, when you just, even though the Reds weren't that great, just when you run through the stats and different things, it was hard to pick against Trevor Bauer in terms of who should be Cy Young or the Cy Young winner. But again, you never know with these things. But yeah, that made total sense to me. And then, like I said, you go now to the MVP, which was a little bit more potentially a little bit more contentious. So you go for the AL. Now to Jose Abreu. So like I said, he was the Rookie of the Year 6 years ago, 2014, and now he's the MVP. So like I said, not going to say it's going to happen for Lewis or Devin Williams, where they won like the Cy Young Williams already won the Reliever of the Year, so there's that. So not saying Kevin Lewis is going to turn to the next Mike Trout or anything like that. But again, the track record of guys that have won Rookie of the Year and then continued on to at least be solid players, and whether or not they're Hall of Fame caliber or All-Star caliber is a different story, but at least be very, very solid players is pretty good. So, at least in the last 10 years. So there's that. Like I said, Abreu made sense to me. Like I said, people were going to say maybe Jose Ramirez because he had the hot little end of the season. I forget who the third guy was. Oh, man, I'm mad I don't remember who the third finalist was. But regardless, he shouldn't have beat out Jose Abreu. So, does it really matter? No. Yeah, he led the AL in RBIs with 60, finished second in home runs with 19, finished fourth in average in 317. Was it LeMahieu? It might have been LeMahieu. Like I said, he won the MVP, which I thought made sense. The White Sox were very good, and a lot of the reason why they were very good was because he was very good. So, it makes sense to me. Makes sense to your boy. No, Renter, I remember something. The other, when Coach of the Year, when I was going back through the Coach of the Year names, it was Renteria, Cash, and then I think the guy from the Blue Jays. I know it's random, but that's just how my mind works sometimes. But yeah, him winning the MVP made sense to me. Like I said, I would have been shocked they gave it to Ramirez. Personally, like I said, I think Abreu was good start to finish. The White Sox were pretty good. Again, they had that little rushes there towards the end a little bit to kind of drop them. But they were pretty good start to finish, and a lot of that was because of him. I feel like that's only fair to give him the MVP award this year. And then in the NL, it went to Freddie Freeman, even though, again, shout out to him because he had COVID. And apparently it was, according to him, it was very shaky for a while. He was able to battle through that and have an outstanding season. Helped the Braves win the NL East. Led the MLB in runs, finished second in OPS with a 1.102, and second in the NL in average at a 341, on base percentage in 462, and slugging percentage in .64. Beat out Manny Machado, beat out Mookie Betts. And again, shout out to him because he's been a good player for like a very long time and hasn't obviously had this to add to his resume, but now he does. So I think that's cool for him. Just to be rewarded finally I'm not saying finally for his hard work, because it's not like people didn't know he was good. But I think now people have to realize that, oh, he's like, I don't know where you would rank him in terms of like the top players in the league or whatever, but he's up there. Especially, definitely among first basemen, he's definitely up there. And I just think in general, you'd argue that he'd be pretty high on the short list of best players in the NL. I mean, obviously he just won the MVP, so there's that. But like, he's been consistently good for a majority of his career. Has had multiple seasons with over 30 home runs. He just had 38 home runs and 120 RBIs last season. Has 2 seasons with over 100 RBIs, a couple seasons in the 90s. His career average is 295, hit over 300, including this season 5 times. So like I said, he's been a very good player. Over the course of his career, also is a pretty solid fielder as well. And then never finished higher than, I think, 4th in the MVP voting. Been an All-Star multiple times. I've won a couple Silver Sluggers, won a Gold Glove before. So again, he had All-Star appearances and things like that, but hadn't had the hardware necessarily. He's only won a Gold Glove once. Had now won back-to-back Silver Sluggers and finished second in Rookie of the Year voting in 2011. So there's that. But yeah, let's say he's been a very solid player, and I think now it's just like, again, it's cool for him to have this on his resume now. Because again, I feel like he was warranted and he deserves it. Because he's, like I said, been a very solid player, and I feel like he kind of goes unrecognized when you think about the best players in the league. But he's definitely, like I said, he's definitely up there. So shout out to Freddie Freeman for getting it done. So like I said, that's the MLB awards. Wanted to go through them in case you missed them or you didn't see them. Or again, you can talk about if you agree, you disagree. If you thought someone else should have won whatever award you think someone else should have won, like I said, you feel free to reach out to us. We can discuss it on social media. So, as we always do, every week we will go into our look ahead to the football weekend. Start with college first, then we'll transition to the pros. And in college, more games are getting canceled due to COVID. And as cases are going up around the country, it is not shocking that there is outbreak situation happening on college campuses. But again, this is what we knew was going to happen eventually. At some point, we knew there's going to be a week or weeks where things go awry. And also, it's kind of interesting because, like you've seen with Wisconsin. Well, actually, no. We'll talk about that when we get to the next segment. I don't want to give away things before we get to the next segment. Make you guys want to listen. So we discuss those right after the break. Stay right there.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Feel bad for anyone that was looking forward to any of the SEC matchups this weekend for whatever reason, because basically all of them are canceled at this point or postponed. I guess I should say technically, well, not all of them, but more than half of them. So we talked about the 3 that were already postponed, and then I think it was Wednesday, Georgia and Missouri was added to that list. So now if you're looking for SEC matchups, you got 2-4 Kentucky versus 0-5 Vanderbilt. You got 2-4 Ole Miss against 2-4 South Carolina. And then you got 4-1 Florida versus 3-3 Arkansas. So no Alabama, no LSU, no Auburn, no Mississippi State, no Texas A&M, no Georgia this weekend. So like I said, I'm sorry, SEC country. If any of you are looking forward to any of those games, maybe you're looking forward to the Alabama-LSU matchup, even though LSU is probably going to get smoked. But still, those are 2 marquee teams. You're not going to get it this weekend. Now, maybe you'll get it in the future. Maybe you'll get it down the line. But this weekend, no, sir. No, sirree. And, this is going to be interesting. Because, like we saw with Wisconsin, we could potentially see with Cal, I think their game against Arizona State is still currently up in the air a little bit. I don't think it's been officially postponed or anything like that yet, but apparently the Cal situation due to contact tracing and stuff is still potentially up in the air. We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, due to the fact that mostly a lot of these teams miss a week or 2, if it's not just a player, like I say Clemson, like I said, Charles Lawrence has missed 2 games, players miss a week or multiple weeks or whatever, that's one thing, but we're talking about schools here that have to shut this. It's not it's a bunch of players we have that out. No, it's too much that we can't even play right now. Like I said, that's 4 separate games that happen to in the SEC, so it'd be curious to see what happens next weekend as well. Because again, due to how the outbreak may look and how the situation is, maybe you don't have. I'm trying to think. There's no real great games on the slate next week either. So that's at least a decent thing. But again, you don't want to. If you're Alabama, you don't want to miss 2 games. If you're Georgia, you don't want to miss 2 games. Same Texas A&M, teams that are going to be competing for potentially a playoff berth. You want to play as many games as possible. Auburn not the same way, but still, I'll be curious to see. What's going to happen with that? Because again, I take that back. I think the Georgia situation, I think that was more Missouri than it was Georgia. But I could be wrong about that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many of these games are affected next weekend as well. Because like I said, a lot of these situations aren't just a 1-week thing. So that is intriguing to me. But again, we'll kind of see how that goes. But I am definitely curious to see what happens next weekend as well. Because this is going to be a situation where this isn't the last we're going to hear about this, at least with these teams. Again, if 4 games have to get postponed this weekend, then like I said, the likelihood of all games being played next weekend have to get postponed this weekend. So if the likelihood of 4 games being played next weekend without a hiccup seems kind of slim, personally. And again, we'll see how it plays out. But like I said, COVID definitely has a hold on SEC football at this moment. Also, I was looking through like the games, like Coastal Carolina's 15 and Marshall's 16 in the country. That's where we're at right now. News to your boy. Did not know that. So yeah, if you're looking through the marquee games of the weekend, a lot of, so three separate top 5 teams are not playing this week. At least like 5, I think at this point 5 top 25 teams aren't playing. So yeah, that knocks out a good portion of stuff. But it's like, again, just me personally looking around. I guess I'll start in the Big Ten. You got Indiana playing. They're playing Michigan State, so I don't really know how that's going to work. Indiana should win in theory, but we just don't know at this point how good or bad the Michigan State is, because they did beat Michigan, but then they lost to other teams. They lost to Rutgers. And who did they lose to last week? Some team that like wasn't even like all that good. But again, also Michigan State may not be that good. They lost to Iowa, got smoked. So there's that. But again, since no Ohio State this weekend, if Indiana shows up and shows out, because there'll be no one to compare them to, they could really cement their case as the second best team in the Big Ten. Like I said, with another dominant performance against a Big Ten opponent, like they had last week against Michigan, and also they had the week before against Rutgers. 2 straight back-to-back double-digit wins. This would be another notch in their belt, just again before you get ahead of Ohio State, which I think like they should be fine. I think it was Maryland that had the COVID situation, so like that game should be on for next weekend. Maryland, Ohio State, which is actually a very important game now, which probably many people didn't think before the season. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing them, and also I'm looking at Wisconsin, because again the quarterback, I think Mertz will be back this game potentially. I believe that's what the streets are saying. So if that is in fact true, then this game becomes a little bit more interesting, because again they were potentially one of the other teams that could be in that like consideration for that second best team in the conference, but they haven't played in 2 weeks. Obviously, he had a great showing the first game, and also like this Michigan team isn't that good, so like you don't get a whole lot of stripes for beating them, but you still want to see them go out and do it and see how they look after not being able to play for multiple weeks. See if they come out a little rusty. If the quarterback comes out a little rusty, the team a little rusty, they start off a little bit slow. And if they do, if they're able to like get it back and quickly, I'm just curious to see how that would go personally. But again, I don't know if everyone else is going to care as much about a game between a team that hasn't played in a couple weeks versus a team in Michigan that is not that good this year. So again, we'll kind of see how that plays out. But that is just me personally. I am curious to see how Wisconsin looks. I'm also curious, again, because I'm a Penn State guy, curious to see if, Penn can finally get off the snide and not drop to 0-4 by losing to Nebraska. Would definitely prefer that didn't happen. But again, we'll see kind of how it goes. You can't really assume you get a win. When you're in a winless team, you can't assume you're going to get a win until you actually get a win. And they're not there yet. So, hey, what can I say? I guess we'll kind of see how that goes. But, yeah, there's some interesting ones there. Like I said, big, the SEC, not really a whole lot going on there. Pac-12, some of the games I'm curious to see are, I want to kind of see how Arizona State bounces back. They could or could not play Cal if that, again, this is assuming the game goes off. And if it does, I'm curious to see how Arizona State bounces back, because they had that game last week won against USC. Obviously, they didn't win. USC had a miraculous comeback to help stun them. They basically scored 2 touchdowns in like a 2, not even a 2-minute span of game time to come back from down 13 points. So let's see if there's any long-lasting effects of that. If they're able to bounce back, I have it covered, because again, it's a very short season. Don't have a whole lot of time for screw-ups like that. So again, we'll kind of see how that goes. But again, that's assuming that game even happens this weekend. So I'm curious to see about that. Let's see, Pac-12 wise. Again, just want to see if Oregon can keep winning, because again, that is the conference's best shot at a playoff berth. If you are worried about that, I don't know if Oregon's worried about that. They're probably just worried about playing well. But if you were, you want to see Oregon continue to play well, because just them and USC that are in the top 25 right now, and I said USC's at 20, so it's probably going to be a little hard for them to come up. Though again, if they go undefeated, you never know. But Oregon, like I said, they're 11 right now. They have a much better case. Or much better chance, I should say, not case, but a much better chance of coming from the conference and winning, or getting into the playoff if they, win out and like other things happen. But again, it's still going to be difficult. So what else am I looking forward to seeing? Apparently I don't know. I mean, I know that Virginia Tech's 4-3, so they're not like terrible, but like they're favorites supposedly again in their game against Miami, noon Eastern kickoff. So I'm curious to see about that because again, Miami's a top 10 team, and so you would think like they would be favored, but like apparently they're not. Though I guess I don't know, maybe just beating NC State will do that to you. Because I'm trying to see how good is NC State. Of course, the ESPN app doesn't want to load when I need it to load. But NC State's 4-3, so again, they're not a bad team. And it was on the road. This one's also on the road, so there's that. But I'm kind of curious about that, just to see if they are like not as good. I mean, I know they got smoked by Clemson, so I know they're not like that good. But again, you would think a top 10 team against an unranked opponent, even on the road, would be favored. But they're not. So I'm kind of curious about that one, see how that game goes. I'm just looking around the top 25. I know Cincinnati plays on Friday. So if you're curious to watch a team that may potentially sneak into the playoff, Cincinnati could be that. Again, Eastern Carolina stinks. So I don't expect like a very competitive or close game. But it's college, you never know. But still, like I said, if Cincinnati's gonna have a chance, they're gonna have to win out and stuff like that. So if you're not doing anything, it's a 7:30 kickoff on Friday night. So that's an interesting one if you want to look at that. Also, another one I'm looking at is Notre Dame. One, I'm shocked they don't really have any COVID situations yet because them throwing the field was still nuts. Even especially in a pandemic. Obviously, without a pandemic, it makes a little bit more sense. But pandemic, storming the field is wild. I'm curious to see if they can bounce back again. Or not bounce back, but if they will continue on the success from last week and they went over Clemson against Boston College due to the fact that, again, they knew that was the game. Like, that's the game they needed to win to have any shot at doing anything in the postseason, at least in playoff-wise. So you wonder if your team has let down after, especially against the Boston College team that isn't, like, terrible. Like, they're not they're not a bad team. They're 5-3. Like, they're solid. Their quarterback isn't playing, like, he has 15 touchdowns and 4 interceptions on the season. So, again, you would assume they would win because they're the higher ranked team. They should be the better team, things like that. I think the spread's like 13.5 for this game. So again, you don't know for certain what's going to happen. But again, a team just beat Clemson, you would think they could beat Boston College. But hey, like I said, you don't know if there's a letdown factor. Like again, that they knew that was the game. Like if you want to win a game, it was that game. Again, obviously they could potentially play again in the ACC championship, but you get the point. Like that was the game they needed to win. Boston College, they don't need to win, so I'm curious to see if the energy level is there this next week. But again, I guess we'll kind of see that. Again, that's what 3:30 kickoff. So we'll see about that. Yeah, like I said, the rest of the games kind of personally. So again, these are just games I'm interested in. Also, I know Northwestern's undefeated as well currently. Haven't really talked too much about them. And in the top 25, they play undefeated Purdue this weekend. If you're a Big Ten guy, you want to keep your eyes on that. But yeah, so those are some of the games I'm looking forward to this weekend. Like again, hopefully no more of them get canceled because of COVID or postponed because of COVID or something like that. So, like I said, we've had a lot this weekend already. But like I said, 5 top 25 games, and like I said, that didn't even account for any other games in other conferences or leagues that don't involve top 25 teams. But yeah, so it should be. So I mean, it's still college football. It'll still be an interesting weekend regardless. So after this next break, we will come back here and discuss the NFL side of things. So we discuss that after the break. Stay right there. I just said that twice. But, it is what it is. Stay right there. We'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
we're back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, NFL slate, an interesting slate to say the least. Obviously, I'm paying attention to this because it's the Eagles, but also like a sneaky important divisional games, as sad as it is, between a 2-7 team and a 3-4-1 team. But this is like kind of important for the division. So yeah, you got Eagles, Giants this weekend. The Giants are currently 2-7 at the bottom of the division. But if they win this, they will be 3-7, obviously. And then that will mean no team in the NFC East will leave the weekend with more than 3 wins, which means they're right in. They're right there for the playoffs, potentially. Which is, again, sad and also kind of nuts. But still, interesting to say the least. And also, obviously, they're coming off their win last week against Washington. Yes. But also, they injured Kyle Allen. So, I said you had to have Alex Smith, like, with no prep or anything like that. And they still, almost like I said, they still tried to lose that game. Like, it was still close. If Alex Smith doesn't throw a couple very non-Alex Smith interception turns, like, obviously he's much more conservative. Like, the one over the back over the middle to Jabril Peppers was very wild. Like I said, just completely missed the running back. And also, like I said, he was rolling right and tried to throw it back over the middle, take a short running back. That didn't make any sense. But hey, he still tried it. So, like I said, that game was like sneaky important for the division. Again, they wouldn't advise many people outside of the Northeast area to watch the game because it's probably not going to be that good, especially if it rains. But still, a very important game, to say the least, this weekend. So there is that. Also, not in terms of importance, but just another interesting game I wanted to keep my eye on, especially, in this 4 o'clock window, was the Chargers-Dolphins game. Because again, obviously you want to see the Dolphins can continue to play well. Like they're at 5-3 now through the halfway point. Can they continue that and potentially play for a playoff spot? They're going up to the Chargers, like I said. So you got Tua versus Herbert. Again, it's not, they don't really play each other because they don't play defense. So it's the Tua versus the Chargers defense and Herbert versus the Miami defense. But again, their teams are matching up to top 6 picks. 2 first-round quarterbacks matching up. I think that'd be kind of cool. Herbert's obviously coming into his game playing very well. Doesn't have the wins to show for it, but he's playing very well. Like I said, all in the season, he's got 17 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Like he's been very solid. And if not for him, the Chargers they'd only have 1 win as opposed to at least having 2. So that's cool. Good for them. Completing 67% of his passes, 67% of his passes, averaging 330 yards per game currently. Again, we'll see if that holds up. But also the Dolphins defense isn't like that bad, so I am kind of curious to see how that plays. Obviously, Kyler Murray ran wild on them, but Justin Herbert isn't Kyler Murray, so there is that. I'll be curious to see how they get after Herbert in this game, or if they're able to. Like I said, Herbert's been playing well, may very well be the rookie of the year. If people voted right now, I know I said I would have Burrow just because of the whole season, but again, he's only played 1 less game, and he has better stats. That'll probably matter to a lot of people. So, see how that goes, but again, I thought that was interesting. And just again, to continue to see if the Chargers can find ways to lose games they should win. That's basically the story of the Chargers for my lifetime. Like, that's basically what they do, is they find ways to lose games that they should win. That's what they've continued doing this year, is find ways to lose games that they should win. That's why they only have 2 wins on the season. They could easily be a 5-6 win team if they, just didn't continue to lose games in heartbreaking and devastating fashion. And again, we're just curious to see if this will be another one of those games where they find a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Again, so that'll be an interesting one there. Also, in the 4 o'clock window, 4 o'clock window got most of the good games, to be honest. 4 o'clock window, you also got Bills Cardinals in Arizona. So that's a good one, because obviously you got Josh Allen coming in, feeling himself. He had a great game. Seattle's defense is terrible, but he still played well, so there's that. Kyler Murray coming to his game after, again, losing to the Dolphins, but not necessarily his fault. He did about all he could at 4 total touchdowns, or like I said, ran for 100 yards, threw for like 260, something like that. So, this could be for position in the MVP race. Like I said, the winner of this game, depending on how, again, each of them play, could lead this game ahead of the other in the MVP race. Now, like I said, they're still behind Mahomes, they're still behind Russ, Aaron Rodgers most likely. but they're at least in the conversation of the 5 currently, and however you decide to rank them. And like I said, this will be a good game to kind of see that. Plus, like I said, neither of these defenses are like absolutely shut down, so we should be able to see some points, you would think. And like I said, that'll be an entertaining game, at least to me. I said to each their own, but that'll be an entertaining one to me. Also, you got Seahawks Rams in the 425 game side. I guess I'm assuming it's the Fox game of the week. This is a big one for the Seahawks because they are currently 6-3 after their loss last week 6-2, with their loss last week to the Bills. You got 2 teams behind them in the division that are 5-3, and one of them being the Rams, who they're actually playing. So if you lose to them, now at best you'll all be tied for 6 wins. Like I said, at worst, I don't know. Oh, actually, no. Okay, so yeah, they would probably be they would fall from first to at least second, if not third place in the division. No, probably because they lost to Arizona. Yeah, they could, with a loss, they could fall to third place in the division in one game. So go from potentially being the 1 seed in the conference to now being, like I said, the 6th or 7th, somewhere around there. And like I said, that's a big drop off. So like I said, this is very important for them to kind of get back on track. And also, again, for the Rams, they're coming off their bye, if I remember correctly. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, they didn't play. Yeah, they haven't played since they lost to the Dolphins. So again, they kind of got shellacked by the Dolphins. So you kind of want to see how they adjusted, what they've changed up. Because again, Jared Goff was under pressure all game. Was not good when under pressure. So there's that. And also, again, they got a tough little stretch here in these next couple. They got, like I said, they got the Seahawks this week. They had the Bucks next week. They had the Niners. That's whatever. And then you play the Cardinals. So like I said, 3 of those next 4 games are going to be tough and against not only against divisional opponents, but also quality opponents. So like I said, this would be a good start for the Rams to come off their bye, get a good win against a divisional opponent. Again, put yourself in the race to be back in first place in the division. Like I said, where it looked like before, Seattle was maybe going to run away with it. Now, like I said, they've come back to the pack a little bit, and this could be the Rams' chance to bring them back even further to the pack. Like I said, don't know if it'll happen, but like I said, this is an important game for both these teams. It's not a must-win, per se, but both these teams really need this win. Like I said, the Seahawks need the win to not slide. I guess what were they? They were 4-0 or 5-0? They were 4-0. No, they were 5-0. I was right the first time. They were 5-0, and now they're 6-2 after losing 2 of their last 3. Because you don't want to make it 3 of your last 4 and go from 5-0 to now 6-3. Like, that's a big drop off. And like I said, go from potentially first in your division to now third. Like that's a big difference. So I said big game for them, especially when they have the Cardinals coming up again next week on Thursday night. So like I said, you already lost it in one time. You don't want to come in potentially now you're staying a 3-game losing streak potentially in the face. You don't want to have that happen. Like I said, the schedule lightens up after that because they play the NFC East teams that they haven't played yet. So they play the Eagles, Giants, and Washington, along with the Jets and the Niners in the season. So their schedule is not that hard, but again, you don't want to lose ground in your own division because then that could be hard to make up if they keep winning above you. So it's a big game in the NFC West. I mean, 2 big games in the NFC West really this weekend. Just obviously one involving just NFC West teams. Also, the other game that'll be interesting is this Bengals-Steelers game, only because of the fact that the whole COVID situation. So if Ben can play, our other game becomes a bit more watchable and intriguing, and in theory, the Steelers should win. But again, divisional games, you never really know. But if he doesn't play, then I think they could definitely be on upset alert. And again, if you lose without Big Ben, because you have to start Mason Rudolph, that's not that crazy. But we saw what happened with Matt Stafford, and when he was on the COVID list all week, and then came back, and he was not that good, and then ended up getting hurt. And also, again, Ben's dealing with injuries in his knees. Again, it's not like he's going to play because that's just what Big Ben does. But I'm saying at the same time, that's not something you want to have your older quarterback dealing with injuries on top of the fact that he hasn't had practice all week. That doesn't sound like a recipe for success. But again, we'll see what happens if he can play or not. But like I said, that's an interesting one as well. Looking around, the only one that kind of intrigues me is Raiders Broncos, just another 4 or 5 kickoff. Only because Drew Lock kind of is playing better recently. So, granted, they lost to the Falcons last week. That's not good. But Drew Lock again played better, so there is that. And then Jerry Jeudy went off, so that's always good. And the Raiders don't necessarily have the greatest defense, I don't believe. So, again, this is a game where they're going to have to win because they got to win to keep pace with the Chiefs as much as they can, especially knowing they have the game against the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football next weekend. So you really want to win this game heading into that game. Because, again, your chances of sweeping the Chiefs are probably pretty slim. So you want to have as many wins baked in as you can, especially when they're currently at 8-1 and they're going to be on their bye this week. So you know they're not going to be worse than 8-1. So like I said, even if you win next year, you're still behind them, but at least, again, you close the gap a little bit. So we'll see how that happens. But again, like I said, divisional opponents and divisional matchups are always kind of weird. Like I said, in theory, you would have thought, like, oh, yeah, the Titans should beat the Colts. Like, that shouldn't be an issue. And then, like I said, the Colts generally again, to special teams plays, but they came out and dominated them. And they won the game pretty comfortably, to say the least. So, again, you never really know with these divisional matchups. You never really know. So, like I said, this is the one the Raiders kind of, I don't want to say they can't afford to drop, but they, really shouldn't drop. One. And then two, if they do drop, then like I said, it doesn't just hurt them in the division, it hurts them in the wildcard standing, because like I said, the Browns should beat the Texans, you would think. You don't know, but you would think that. The Dolphins, they're probably thinking they need them to lose to Chargers, who basically invent new ways to lose every week. So like I said, like your margin for error is a bit slimmer, the more games you lose. So like I said, the Raiders kind of want to get this one, but again, we'll see how it plays out. So, like I said, no, absolutely must-see matchups per se. I guess outside of maybe the Josh Allen Kyler Murray matchup, that might be the most must-see in my own personal opinion. Obviously, for implications, Seahawks Rams is the most must-see. But in terms of just watchability and cool stuff you may see in a game, that's probably the one. Yeah, like I said, it should be an interesting weekend to say the least. Regardless of who's playing, there's always interesting stuff that happens, interesting games, big performances, big plays, things like that. So you don't have to worry about that. Just pick and choose which games you want to watch, or just like I said, do what most people do, and that's watch Red Zone and keep up to date that way. But that'll do it for me here today on the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. I want to thank you guys as always for listening to me talk. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure you're always on top when we drop our latest stuff. Also, if you could please as well, give us a 5-star rating, write us a nice review. Very appreciated, very helpful. And also, what you guys like. We really just like the ways we can improve, all that fun stuff. And also, if you're on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can debate, we can discuss. You can talk about, again, games you're looking forward to watching this weekend in college football or the NFL. Talk about your feelings on the MLB awards, who you thought should have won, if you thought they got it all right, if you thought there were some ones that you would have picked differently. Talk about what's going on in Houston. Like I said, they are having some issues down there with the basketball team. And I didn't even talk about the fact that the Texans fired this woman, HR woman that is apparently very well renowned and I think won some sort of reward not that long ago. And it was very shocking. I think she's the only woman that's as high as she was too. So it was very kind of out of nowhere. So I know JJ Watt expressed his displeasure. So there's that. Houston sports may or may not be in shambles at the moment. But yeah, like I said, where do you think Russ could end up? Do you think would you trade him? Would you try to work it out? I don't know. Like I said, it sounds like he wants out, so they may accommodate him. But I think also he has a contract. He can go anywhere if they don't trade him. So again, we'll kind of see how that plays out. Also, again, maybe you have some ideas on what's wrong with the Ravens offense currently, because like I said, their passing game is not good. So you got to get that figured out before it is too late and they end up losing that division. Maybe we'll kind of see how that goes. Before I get out of here, like I always do, want to shout out the essential workers. But before I do that, I want to shout out the poll workers. Instead, who even though a lot of them, they're finishing up their counts and different things now you got the president going through lawsuits with recounts and stuff. So I know Georgia is one that says they're doing a full hand recount, which again is wild in 2020 that we don't have technology or software good enough that you can trust it. That you have to do millions of ballots recounted by hand for what? I don't even know, because the margin in which the president is behind is not enough. You're not going to find tens of thousands of votes in a recount, you would think. And if you do, then you basically got to do the whole election over, because that's way too much of a discrepancy to have 10,000 or 14, I think it was about like 14,000 votes changed or whatever. But again, if you've been working in the polls, you're going to have to continue to work in the polls because of these foolish recounts. Shout out to you. Again, you're doing a job that is very important, very meaningful. I know it's a lot more stressful than it normally is now due to the scrutiny that the president has placed on the process and the fact that they've made it not trustworthy, and thus they made his supporters not support it. I mean, or not trust it, and thus they may lead to violence or other things. I know some people were a little bit afraid to leave wherever they were counting at, the clerk's office or the county center, wherever they were counting. Out of fear they may be attacked or jumped or whatever because they weren't counting or there weren't enough votes going for the candidate they wanted. So like I said, it's not a job that many people talk about, but it's clearly a job that's very important. And again, so if you have to deal with any of that, or anybody that's a poll worker or anything like that, let them know that I appreciate them. And like I said, get the essential workers. Anybody's been deemed essential throughout this pandemic, so doctors, nurses, EMTs, first responders, firefighters, postal service workers, grocery store workers, retail workers, dollar store, FedEx, UPS, Amazon. As we've seen, cases are continuing to rise if you weren't paying attention in the country. So, this is not going in the right direction. So these people's jobs will now become much harder because there are now more people involved, more people with COVID, and like I said, it's going to make things more crowded in hospitals and places less safer to go to because now you don't know who does or doesn't have it anymore. I mean, not that we ever really got rid of it, but now it's getting worse than it ever was, so that's not a good thing because again, cold and flu season hasn't even officially hit yet. So yeah, we'll kind of see how that goes, but again, shout out to anybody who's deemed essential that to work during this because I know it's kind of a mess, especially right now, and I know you'd probably rather be doing other stuff than working in an essential service right now at the moment. But again, someone's got to do it. So if it is you, I appreciate you and all the work that you've put in throughout this entire pandemic. And we're going to have to continue to do because, again, unfortunately in this country, it's not really going anywhere. So that is definitely unfortunate for the upcoming winter months. Also, if you're still able to go out to bars and restaurants, I know some places are closing them down earlier or shutting them down completely or whatever just because of the COVID situations in their state or their region. Like I said, tip your bartenders, your waiters, your waitresses, your bartenders, just because, again, this winter is probably going to be very rough on the industry, especially if places are going to have to shut down if we have another lockdown or something like that. So while you still can and while you're still going to these places, again, just try to tip them as best as you can. Not saying to go beyond your means, but if you can afford to tip a little extra, I imagine it will be appreciated and go a very, very long way for all these people. Also, again, wear a mask, please, people. Like I said, COVID is still here and it's still raging. So, do your best to protect yourself and your family, your friends, your coworkers, whoever. So that they can protect their friends, their families, their coworkers, and it goes on and on and on. Like I said, the simplest thing we can all do is wear a mask. So, just do that. It's not that hard. But yeah, I've been Chris Blades. That has been my time. And until next time, peace out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.